Luke chapter 17, we've been, for the last couple of weeks, looking at these words of Jesus here in Luke chapter 17. Jesus said to his disciples, Luke 17, verse 1, "It's inevitable that stumbling blocks will come, but woe to him through whom they come. It would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were thrown into the depths of the sea than that he should cause one of these little ones to stumble. Watch out, be on your guard. If your brother sins, rebuke him. If he repents, forgive him. If he sins against you 7 times a day and returns to you 7 times saying, 'I repent,' forgive him." And the apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith," which again is kind of the biblical version of, "You've got to be kidding me." Really? We're told that in Matthew's gospel, Peter was the one at one point who suggested the idea of 7. "How many times should my brother sin against me and I forgive him? 7 times, Lord?" And he said, "I didn't say to you 7 times, or even 70 times 7. He went on to give a parable to say it's limitless. You can't put a number on it. But when you look at it, like we just read through it, it seems like that's crazy, that's absurd, that's impossible. And you know, the way some people define forgiveness, it is absurd. And it is impossible because it's not what God wants. It's absurd because it's a problem we created. It's not the problem we have. No matter how we look at this, there's going to be a problem. It's going to seem impossible. But it's important to make sure that we have the proper problem, the one that is there, not a problem we're creating for ourselves by a misunderstanding of what it means to forgive. A misunderstanding of what our responsibility is, and a misunderstanding of the fact that forgiveness is not a burden, an added weight laid upon our lives. Forgiveness is a gift from God. It's a gift for us. It's not a free pass for the abuser. It's a way of freedom for those who've been abused. And if you see it in that sense, it's a good thing that it doesn't have a limit. It's a good thing that there's no number you can put on it. It's like the steadfast love of the Lord. It's like his mercy. It never comes to an end. It's fresh. It's new all the time. It's a gift that God has given to us. Now, if Jesus were saying here that someone can come up to you and do something cruel, injure you, and all they have to do is say, "I'm sorry for doing that," and then they come up again, and they do it again, and they say, "I'm sorry," and you just keep letting them come and do this cruel thing to you over and over and over again, that would be absurd. To just keep allowing yourself to be set up like a bowling pin for this bully to come and bowl you over again and again and again, it would be absurd because we were not designed for such a thing. And it wouldn't serve the abuser or the abused. It wouldn't serve anywhere. There's no reset button inside of us. When someone does something cruel to us, we can't just push the reset button and there. It's all like it never, ever happened. Even a single-celled animal, a little paramecium, you give it a shock, you know, it doesn't take too many shocks, and pretty soon it's like, you know, quit doing that to me. It'll swim to the other side of the petri dish or the microscope slide, because the fact is that when we've been injured, there's a natural and appropriate desire to get away from that. And to say that you just keep coming back and someone just says this mother may I magic word, forgive me, and yet they do this thing to you again and again, that kind of cruelty is cruelty. And one that God wouldn't call his children to enter into. That kind of game where someone just says, "I'm sorry for hitting you," and then they hit you again and again and again and again and again. If God called his kids to that kind of game, what kind of God would he be? Wouldn't he be cruel? I mean, again, you take the similes that Jesus used. He would say, "Look, you folks have got problems, but even with your problems, would you do this to your kids?" And then he would say, "Well, if you wouldn't do it, how much more your heavenly Father?" He wouldn't do that sort of thing. And so it's important to understand that you wouldn't think very well of a parent. You know, once in a while we hear of some parents that are cruel to their kids, and as a society, we're outraged. We say, those parents shouldn't even have kids if they're going to do that kind of cruelty. What would you think of a parent that just keeps letting their kid be bullied over and over and over again? Just take it, just forget it, just stand there, let them do it to you. What would you think of a principal that did that? If you sent your kids to a school and your kid was smacked and knocked and beat up, and the principal said, well, you know what? You just got to forgive them. Go back out there again. Let them do it again and again. You'd pull your kid out of that school. If that's the way it is with parents and principals, how much more we ought to understand that God doesn't invent those games, and he doesn't call his kids to be in a place where those, this is a cruel world, but God's not a cruel God. And if that were what's being said, just, let them smack you, let them abuse you again and again and again, who benefits from that? It's the psycho that benefits from that. It's the bully. It's the one who just bowls others over. Now, Jesus did tell us if someone comes and hits you specifically, we're talking about an offense, and in the case it might have been more of a offense of disrespect to slap you, not punch you. But even then, he said if someone were to slap you with their hand on the right cheek, kind of a backhanded sort of slap, he said turn the other cheek. But he didn't say do that 7 times or 70 times 7. He said turn the other cheek. And maybe in your mind, maybe in my mind, we have this idea that it's just like, but he didn't say that. He said, essentially, do it once. How many cheeks you got? In other words, you don't turn your back on them immediately and say, it's over, I'm walking away from you. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was, certainly it was an insult. But face the problem. Rather than walk away from it, don't turn your back, turn the other cheek. But as we saw last week, there's an important word here, and one that we kind of just stayed on last week, because if we miss this word, if we miss this part, we miss it all. He says, be on your guard, verse 3, if your brother sins against you, rebuke him. The assumption is that you're going to do that part. Somebody does something against you, you rebuke him. And we saw again last week, spent a whole week on it. A rebuke is basically saying, stop it. Don't do that again. It's a cease and desist order. It's one that you give personally yourself the first time. First time someone smacks you, you not only have a right, you have a responsibility to say, stop it, and don't ever do that again. Face the person, say that once, and if they do it a second time, then I think you've got good reason to walk away. Good reason to at least get away from arm's distance, at least. Don't let them do that a third time. Now, doesn't mean you don't forgive them. Forgiveness is another notion. Forgiveness is another idea. You need to forgive because that's for you. But to allow a person stay within arm's distance, allow them to keep offending over and over again, now, there has to be strict limits on abuse. Wherever we have authority in our own lives or with the police or with whatever in the world, there always has to be strict limits on abuse, but not limits on forgiveness. Forgiveness is unlimited. That's a wonderful thing. I think you'll see that today, but it's abuse that has to be stopped. So again, be on your guard. If your brother sins, rebuke him. Say something, stop him. And again, we saw last week, we went to Matthew chapter 18, and Jesus gives a whole, if it's first against you, then go to him personally, privately, say, stop it, don't ever do it again. If they do it, if they don't receive that, then get a couple other people, stop it, don't ever do that again. If they don't receive that, then get the whole church council together and say, stop it, don't ever do that again. And if they don't listen to that, then put them outside the church, because they're not going to be allowed to ever do that again. It's putting limits on the abuse. And it's what we do in our own society, in the sense that someone smacks you, if you receive the words of Jesus, you don't smack them back. You want to, but, and I would certainly understand if you did. But if we're going to take the words of Jesus, not abuse the words of Jesus, but just take what he said. It's hard enough just what he said. In fact, it's impossible for most of us, just what he said. But what he said is they smack you. Don't turn your back. Turn the other cheek. say, stop it, don't do that again. If they smack you a second time, then I think you can walk away. But just like in our legal system, once you've told them, then now you take it, you've given them an order. Stop, cease and desist. But they won't listen to that. You can take it then to a lawyer, and then the lawyer will write up a letter, a cease and desist order, and they can send it by certified mail, and now it's proven you should receive that. Don't do it. And then then you can take it to court, and the judge gives a restraining order. Don't ever do that again. And if they do it again, then they can go to jail. That's a just legal system that we have set up, and Jesus gave a very similar thing in Matthew 18. You've transgressed, you've offended, now I put up a fence to stop your offense. Now you climbed over that fence, now I put up another fence, and another, and a little higher, and over there's all of these fences to stop your offenses. But even while I'm on the safe side of all these walls, even if you can't get over all of these things that I have rightly and justly put up to keep you over there, even if you can't get to me physically anymore, it doesn't mean you can't get to me. And that's where forgiveness comes in. Because even when I finally get on that place where you can't abuse me anymore because, you know what, you just can't get to me, you can still get to me. And if I don't allow forgiveness to work within me, no, you're not physically around to get to me. But what you did, maybe what you did only once, it keeps getting to me because I haven't, on my side of things, done what I need to do. And that's the gift that God gives to us. The ability to be able to say, you know what, this person who can no longer touch me is still messing with my head. And no, they're not physically or spiritually doing it, but what they did is still doing it to me. This thing keeps going over and over and over in my mind. Whenever you're personally injured, and thankfully in my case, I haven't gone through all that much. Maybe God knows I couldn't handle it. Some of you folks have gone through so much personal injury, so much abuse, but just even the little bit that I know about for myself, I know the more personal it is, the harder it is, the more you feel like you were a friend and you were the good guy, and the more it can hurt. The more you trusted somebody, you thought they were the good guy, the more it can hurt. And just because you've done all the rebuking and they can't get to you physically anymore, you still have this thing that can get to you. And there's a desire inside to basically get even. A desire inside sometimes that you want vengeance. You don't just want justice in some sort of a theoretical sense. You want to make them pay. Maybe none of you have ever felt this way. But some human beings feel this way sometimes. When it really is personal, you want to make them pay. You want to see them suffer. You want to teach them a lesson, which you really don't want to teach them a lesson because you don't give a rip about them. You don't care if they ever learn anything. But it sounds so much better to say, I want to teach you a lesson than to say what I'm really feeling. I want to see you suffer. There's that kind of stuff inside of us. There's a capacity for cruelty in humanity. And sometimes that cruelty hits us, but understand that we're all human. And that capacity for cruelty is inside each of us to one extent or another. And if you start letting it go, this desire to seek a revenge that you yourself couldn't handle, to see them suffer, to make them pay, that capacity for cruelty that maybe for you might be like a little mustard seed. I hope it is. But if you feed it, it'll grow. And if you have that thing inside of you and you don't have some way to root it out, it continues to grow. And we know that. Hurt people tend to hurt people. Wounded people tend to wound people. It goes on. We recycle our pain. This is Psychology 101. You folks all know that. Seventh generation, it talks about in the Bible. And not just because it stops with generation number 8. It's just like it goes on and on. From father to son to generation. All of this bitterness, all of this payback, all of this cruelty and counter cruelty. It's part of the problem that we were born into. But the good news is that God himself was born into it as well. By choice, he came inside of this system. And again, Jesus is not ashamed to say, you're my family. And I've come to save you from that. I've come to somehow find a way to break the cycle to break this repeated pattern of you did it to me and now I'm doing it to you. You did it to my dad, I'm not going to do it to your kids. To somehow break all of this stuff. And he's been showing us, we've seen it over and over in the good news that Jesus gives us, that we have to watch out for what goes on inside of us more than anything about what's going on around us. And Jesus has pointed out so often in these scriptures, watch out, be on your guard. It seems like almost every time he says watch out and be on your guard, he then says something about what goes on inside of us. He never says watch out, be on your guard, Herod is going to do this, or Pilate is going to do that, or the government is going to. It's never watch out and be on your guard about what someone else will do. In fact, Jesus specifically told us you don't have to be afraid of what anyone else can do you, not even those who can destroy your body. That's the end of what they can do. Be concerned about what happens inside of yourself. Be concerned about what you do to yourself, because the worst wounds are self-inflicted. They're the ones that we work on ourselves. And again, this is all very fundamental, and many of you know it well, but I just pray that once again today you'd be encouraged to know that if Jesus says that you can stop, you can stop. He can help you to let go, because that's what forgiveness is about. Letting go of the grudge, letting go of this desire for the vendetta. He says, be on your guard, watch out. If your brother sins, rebuke him, tell him to stop it. If he repents, though, you have to forgive. You know what? And even if he doesn't repent, you still have to let it go. Not because that restores the relationship. No relationship can be restored without a recognition of a problem, without a dialogue, without a working that God will work. Don't think that any of this was meant to be just magic wand sort of stuff. It's all very real and very practical. I can give forgiveness as a gift to myself, as God's gift to me. It sets me free. But nobody can receive forgiveness unless they're sorry. How can you possibly receive forgiveness for something you're not even sorry for? You don't even admit that you've done anything wrong. Try that. Say to somebody, I forgive you. Forgive me? You're insulting me. What did I do to you? Now you got a real fight on your hands. You can't forgive me. I haven't done anything yet. Boom, there, now you can. But you can't even forgive me for that because you deserved it. It's just, forgiving is the gift that I can give. But forgiveness as a gift to be received, you have to realize I did something wrong. I'm sorry. But the Lord is in the business of helping us to be free, to let go of these problems, self-inflicted over and over. The way he put it back, used a different word, different Greek word, but back in Luke chapter 6, you might remember, it was about 12 years ago we were back in Luke chapter, maybe 12 months ago we were back in Luke chapter 6, but he used the Greek word, always one of my favorites, apoluo. It sounds so Hawaiian. Apoluo. Just apoluo. Just let go, release, set at liberty, and you will be set at liberty. Let it go, and you'll be free. It's just that whole idea of look, I love you. And vengeance belongs to me, and I'll take care of him because I love him or I love her as well. But for you, let it go. Set at liberty, and you will be set at liberty. He says in verse 4, if he sins against you 7 times in a day and returns to you 7 times saying, I repent, forgive him. And again, it's not putting a number on it. It's that, look, as long as the offense is at work within you, you need a way to let it go. You need a way to release it. It has nothing to do with whether this person is sorry, and certainly you're already rebuking, certainly you're already protecting, certainly you're already doing the things that he's told you to do. Because obviously, when you read that and you try to think it through in your own mind, somebody sins against me 7 times and keeps coming back and saying they're sorry, forgive me. It's not going to take more than 2 times. I'm going to go, oh yeah, really? How are you sorry? If you're so sorry, quit it. And that's part of the rebuke. Okay, that's all reasonable. If someone keeps doing the same thing over and over again, you got good reason to think that they're not really all that sorry. You got good reason to put a little bit of distance between you and them, but still, forgiveness is for you. It's the gift where you can just let it go, because you know what? What does it matter if there's a poison at work within me? What does it matter if that poison entered through 7 infections or 1 or 70 times 7? It doesn't matter how many times it hit me. It's eaten me up. It's inside of me, and I have to deal with it. And so, yeah, you have every reason to think, you're not really sorry. You know, like John the Baptist said to the religious leaders as they came out for their water baptism, because it was the fad, it was the trend, and they all came out. And John the Baptist said, bring forth fruit in keeping with repentance. Where's the proof that you're really repentant? You know, yeah, I can baptize you in water, but that's just symbolic. The real change is something that will be reflected in the fruit, the love, the joy, the peace, the fruit of the Spirit that will come forth from your life. If someone's really repentant, of course, there's a work, and that's between God and that person, and it becomes evident to all. And we're told to watch out for those that talk a good talk, maybe even preach a good preaching, but they don't have the fruit. Beware of the wolves in sheep's clothing, Jesus said. You'll know them by their fruit. So it's totally reasonable to say, you know what, I forgive you because I need to do that, but I'm staying away from you. I'm looking to see some sort of fruit before I even get within arm's distance, because you've already done this too many times. All of that's reasonable. Again, the more the offenses, the more you have to have the fences, and you build these rebukes and redoubts and restraints, and you do everything you can do to stop them from physically getting to you. Abuse has to stop, but forgiveness has to keep going on. Because now I'm safe on the other side of these fences that have been set up, but now what about me? And that's what God's always concerned. What about you? What's going on inside of you? You're still, even in your dreams at night, flinching and shaking and sweating. And this is a gift to be able to say, you know, God, I'm going to give it to you. Vengeance belongs to you. Justice belongs to you. Fairness, equity belongs to you. Protection belongs to you. I've done everything I can, the cease and desist and all the protection. Now, Lord, help me to let it go. And that's what forgiveness is about. Let it go. Give it over to God and then let God deal with it. 7 times, 70 times 7. You can't put a number on it, because the nature of forgiveness being a gift to you, why would you want to limit it? I need as much as I can possibly have. I need the cleansing. I need, as often as I feel the frustration and the poison at work within me, I need a way to let it go. And I believe the gospel of Jesus Christ is the way. Not a magic way, but a reasonable way. To know that, look, he came and he submitted and he allowed himself to be abused in these ways. And he put a limit on it as well there. But he's gone through it with me and for me. And somehow he could say, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And I can agree. I don't know what people are doing. I don't know why they do what they do. I don't know what I'm doing. But to see someone so kind and so powerful, so good as Jesus, who says, if you've seen me, you've seen your Father. That's such a wonderful tool and a person who will help me personally to forgive, to let it go, to give forgiveness. Again, receiving it is on the other side. They're going to have to deal with themselves and with their God. But even all that being said, most of you are nodding your head either because you're getting really sleepy right now, or you're seeing that you can agree, okay, yeah, that makes more sense if you look at it that way. But even all of that being said, I can still agree with the apostles who say in verse 5, Lord, increase our faith. Because even if you look at it that way, there are things that you folks have gone through, and if you came and told me what you've gone through, I would agree with you. Wow, that seems impossible. How in the world can you forgive that? But I can certainly say, if it's still eating you up, if it's still something that's troubling you, find a way. Ask God to help you find a way. Find a way to, look, you've stopped that from happening, but find a way to get that poison out of you. Because that's what the Lord is all about, to help you be free. So they say, increase our faith, but they made a fundamental mistake, as we often do. The Lord said to them, if you had faith like a little teeny tiny mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and be planted into the sea, and it would obey you. Another time, another place, similar circumstance, he said, if you had a faith like a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, this mountain be lifted up and thrown into the sea. And both of these pictures, maybe a mulberry tree, I could picture a big old backhoe digging it up, but to be planted in the sea, they don't take there. Trees don't grow in the sea. Either way, these two pictures point to something that really does seem like that's impossible, which I think that's exactly what he meant us to think. That just seems impossible. How can I do that? That just seems impossible. But here's the point. He said, it's not how much faith you have. They said, increase our faith. And he essentially said, it's not the quantity of your faith, it's the quality of your faith. And when I say quality, I'm not talking about good, better, best, like rating roofing material at Home Depot or something. The quality in terms, is it a living or is it a dead? Not how much faith do you have, but what type of faith do you have? If you have a living faith, if you just have teeny, teeny, tiny, itsy, bitsy faith, but if that faith is alive, like a seed, that's the picture. Because the amazing thing is, seeds are amazing. It's one of those everyday miracles that if you heard about it or read about it and you'd not known that that's the way things work, you'd say it's science fiction. The idea that you could have these chemicals that come to form a genetic code that somehow can take this thing that looks like a grain of sand and a whole tree, and just the marvels, the everyday miracles. And that's the point, is life is miraculous. It really is. I mean, it's enough to say it's here, and how did it get here? That's why I have to believe in God, because it's just too incredible that the universe is what it is. I mean, anyone can say it is what it is, but I have to believe in God. And yet, if that's all I saw was the universe, I'd have to believe sometimes God's a little cold and a little cruel and a little indifferent, like the universe seems to be. The good news is that God has become one of us, and he's shown us he's warm and he's kind and he's caring. But just the fact of life is miraculous. And you know what's even more miraculous? Love is miraculous. The love of God is miraculous. Jesus said he is the seed, he's the logos, he's the language, he's the word, and he comes within us. And so that's the hope. It's not how much faith do I have? It's, do I have faith in someone who loves me, who is my God? If you have the love of God inside of you, you'll do amazing things. And I know you, like, I want to do it now. No. Life doesn't work that way. Seeds don't work that way. You won't understand. You won't understand, but trust. If you have the life of God at work within you, if you want the life of God to work within you, if you have the love of God at work within you, if you want the love of God to work within you, just trust that somehow, someday, you'll get past it. And not just get past it, but he works all things together for good to those who walk in his ways, who trust in his ways. And leave it there. Because every time you try and think of how it might work, then I think it does insult to what's really going to happen. It'll be better than that. And it may do injury to you, because whatever we can think of won't be good enough. There are things inside of you that someone can say, well, maybe this will happen, and maybe that'll happen, and you're still feeling like, no, that doesn't make up for it. That doesn't take back. That doesn't erase. And you know what? Just leave it there. But life is miraculous. Love is miraculous. Keep walking in life. Don't give up. Don't die. Keep walking in love. Don't give up. Just believe that every time it keeps coming up inside of you, letting it go. I don't know how I'll ever get over it. Somehow, someday, the love of God, the life of God working within you, it'll work. Because you had not great faith, you had living faith. You had the faith that he gave you. You had the faith of somebody who loves you and cares for you that way. And that's the idea. And then Jesus went on to say something that I wish he wouldn't have said. If he'd advised or asked my advice, I would have said, Jesus, don't use that analogy. But, I'm often wrong, and he's always right. But he says this, verse 7, which of you having a slave, plowing or tending sheep, will say to him when he's come in from the field, come immediately and sit down here and eat? Will he not say to that slave, no, you prepare something for me to eat, and you properly clothe yourself before you come and serve me at table? And you wait until I've eaten and drunk, and then you can go ahead and eat and drink something, you slave. He says, he doesn't thank the slave because he did the things that were commanded, does he? You don't even give him a thank you. No, you do it. He's a slave. Jesus said, so you too, when you do all the things that are commanded you, say, we are unworthy slaves because we've only done that which we ought to have done. See what I mean? Jesus, why did you even say that? Now, I've got to spend at least 10 minutes trying to undo what you did. But you see, he's talking to people. He always meets people where they're at. He meets you in the culture where you're at. Thank God we've gotten pretty much away from this concept of slavery. I know some of you think that your job is pretty bad, but it's nothing like it was at that time. Slavery was a huge part of the culture in which they lived. In the Roman world, 20 to 30% of the people were slaves. And they didn't think of it as a moral issue any more than anything. It was just the way it was. And these were the people, these were the times into which Jesus was talking to the people. And he meets people at their own level, and sometimes that level is pretty low, and slavery is a pretty low level, but he's giving them a picture they could connect with. Just like when he talks about growing plants and tending to sheep, things that maybe you and I have never done. He gives those pictures because they did it all the time. And now he gives a picture about slavery because they were familiar with it, not because he's endorsing it, not because it's the way that God treats us like slaves. This is not a model of what our Heavenly Father would do. In fact, quite the opposite. Jesus says there in verse 7, which of you having a slave plowing or tending sheep? He's saying, you're a slave owner, and you do it this way because that's just the way it's done. Of course that's the way it's done, because that's the way slavery works. He says, you're comfortable with that? That's your society? That's the world you live in? Well, and then he goes on to draw the picture that can still serve us, but he's not saying this is the way God is. In fact, look back with just for a moment. Just look back at Luke chapter 12. It was about 12 weeks ago, maybe, we were in Luke chapter 12. But look at what Jesus says in Luke chapter 12. Keep a finger in 17 because we're going back there. But Luke 12, verse 35. Remember this one? Jesus said, Luke 12:35, be dressed in readiness and keep your lamps alit. Be like people who are waiting for their master when he comes back from the wedding feast, that they may immediately open the door to him when he comes and knocks. He says, happy, how blessed are those slaves whom the master finds on the alert when he comes. Truly I say to you that he will gird himself to serve, and he will have them recline at the table, and he'll come up and wait upon them, whether he comes in the second watch or even in the third and finds them so. How blessed they are. So without getting into the whole context of that whole story, just understand he's saying, look, if you're ready for me, here's what I'm going to do for you. I get there, and I'm going to dress myself as the servant. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to do things that way beyond fair practice. It's amazing grace. It's like Jesus at the Last Supper. He says, who's the greatest one at any table? The one sitting and dining at the top of the table, or the one down serving? And they all agree, well, the great one's always the one sitting there dining. And Jesus said, look at me. I'm the one with the apron. I'm the one washing your feet. He says, I'm the greatest, but look what I'm doing. And then he said, you guys learn to do that as well. So that's the teaching of Jesus on this subject. But in the context of a world where, sadly, slavery was a big part of it, just think about this for a second. A slave has been out taking care of the crops all day long, because slaves did that. And then he'd been taking care of the sheep and the herds all day long because slaves did that. And then the slave comes in, and Jesus is saying, you know, when you have a slave, it's not like the slave comes in and says, whoo, I clocked in, 8 hours today. I'm done. No, it's the slave. The slave has done all of that. Then you come in, the grand poobah, right? You're the slave owner. And now the slave gets everything ready for you and has to dress up good, not for comfort, but to make you feel comfortable because I look like a well-dressed slave. I'm not all covered with all my farming stuff anymore or my sheep herding stuff. And so I put on clean clothes and I take care of you and I serve you. And then I'm done. Finally, the master's ready for bed. Now I can finally eat and drink. That's for a slave, when they're doing all that extra work at the end of the day, they're not working overtime. They're a slave. They're not getting paid time and a half or double time for that. They're a slave. They're not earning bonus points for that. They're a slave. They're not feeling like, man, the master really owes me one. No, they're a slave. They're simply thinking in that old wretched system, they're simply thinking, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do because I'm a slave. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. Okay, does that help you? Probably not a bit. Now back to this whole idea. Jesus is saying, forgive, let it go. Doesn't matter how many times, forgive. And I'm sitting here saying, no. Man, if you told me to do it 7 times, you'd be putting a heavy load on my shoulder. Don't do that, Jesus. Remember, Jesus is the one who said of the religious leaders, no, you guys like to put heavy loads on people and you don't lift a finger to help them. Jesus isn't like that. Jesus said, my yoke is easy. My load is light. He wants us to see that, you know what, when he tells us that we need to forgive, he's not putting more burdens on us. He wants to bless us. And it's important for me as a Christian to say, you know what, if I forgive people, I'm not earning any bonus points here. If I forgive people, I shouldn't get paid time and a half, because I'm forgiving people. First of all, I had to put up with you, and now I'm forgiving you, and God really, really owes me. I can't wait till I get to heaven and find out what he's got for me, because I've been forgiving so many numbskulls all my life. I just can't wait to see what he's got for me, because I have really, really been going the extra mile putting up with all this stuff. No, instead, I ought to say, you know what? I'm just doing what I ought to do, because I'm a Christian. I'm not a slave. I'm free. But you know what? I want to stay free. It's for freedom that you were set free. And if you want to stay free, keep letting it go. No bonus points, no like, oh man. Now, don't think that way. There are so many ways to be sick. I'm glad all of you are here and healthy. If you're not healthy, get out of here. At least if it's contagious. I applaud people who won't come to church because they're feeling sick, and God gives no bonus points for people who come to church and infect their brethren. That's why we're so glad that Tina is not here today. She's, if someone says, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, well then, go ahead, stay home. And I just went off on a rabbit trail, but rabbit brains tend to do that once. Oh, secondary infections, that's the point I was going to make. And sickness, I knew I was talking about something that made. There's lots of ways to be sick. And when someone does something to you, that can make you sick inside. You've abused me. But now what you do inside of yourself, there's secondary infections. There's things that work within you that may make it even worse. And if you can survive that, then there's still other ways to get sick. You can be sick with pride, and you can be sick with self-righteousness because now I'm so forgiving. Now I have done all of this, all of that. There's all kinds of ways to, and God doesn't want you sick at all, not in your soul. He wants you free entirely. So if someone abuses you, tell them to stop it, and do what you have to do to make them stop. Abuse has to stop, but keep the forgiveness going. And once you've forgiven, if you find yourself patting yourself on the back, I have forgiven. Or you find that God hasn't given you a job raise lately, or you didn't get the car that you were promised at the dealership, it turned out to be a lemon, and you're feeling resentful because I have been so dang forgiving. I have done so many things for God. I've worked overtime for him, and now what has happened is now you've got another sickness inside because of the way you handled with the first sickness. You know, first someone did something to you and you let that go, but now you think that you're supposed to get bonus points, overtime. I did more, I went above and beyond. No, you didn't. You're a Christian. You didn't go above and beyond. You took the medicine you need because God wants you to be healthy. But don't sit there and feel like, wow, aren't I forgiving? No, feel like, wow, aren't I free? You know, the big influenza, the big flu deal, you know, we're talking about the one we've got now. Thank God for the medicines and things we've got now. But the big one 100 years ago, the majority of the folks that died wasn't from the virus of the flu. It was secondary infections. It's the pneumonia or the septicemia. It's something else. It was mostly young, healthy people because they had the most powerful immune systems. And the immune system just goes boom, and it ends up being the secondary things from the overly healthy immune system that causes secondary problems. That's the way it can work in our bodies. It can work that same way in our soul. And the good physician, Jesus, is saying, in all senses, stay free. Someone does something to you, tell them to stop it, get away. But forgive them. Once you've forgiven them, don't add to that by thinking that now I should get some forgiveness overtime pay. I should get some, no, I'm just doing what I need to do. I'm just doing what I ought to do. That's the idea. There are so many ways to mess yourself up. That's all Jesus is saying. Probably the worst way to mess yourself up is to be prideful, religiously prideful. That's the thing he's talking the most about. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Don't think you did something special because you forgave him. The special thing happened within you. You forgave him. You let it go. Whew, isn't that great? Basic idea. Granting forgiveness isn't granting favors. It's just taking the medicine. It's just being free. And isn't it nice to be free? Doesn't it feel good? What's God going to give me for feeling good? Feeling good. Isn't that good enough? Isn't that the reward? Isn't that what heaven's all about? Isn't good good? That's the idea. Forgiving is God's gift to you. He forgives and he will help you to forgive. That's his gift. And since forgiving is a gift, isn't it good that you don't put a number on it? Isn't it good that it's without limit and without end? It goes on and on. As much as I might feel the sickness within, God, help me to forgive. Help me to let go. Help me to be free. And you know what? There's no limit on that. It goes on forever and ever. That's his love. That's his gift. We're not slaves. We're free. Stay free. Stay healthy. Let's turn to him with a couple of closing songs.
In my heart I hear this song of the highway, saying someday soon I'll stand above the clouds. I'll pass through this veil of tears. Your strength will hold me through the years. In barren lands I'll drink your springs of life that flow through everything. Strength behind me, strength before me, strength beneath me. If I stand or if I fall, strength behind me, strength before me, strength beneath me. If I stand or if I fall. From strength to strength you call me strength. To strength you call me strength. To strength you call me home. From strength to strength you call me strength. To strength you call me strength. To strength you call me home. You call me home. behind me, strength before me, strength beneath me if I stand and if I fall. Strength behind me, strength before me, strength beneath me if I stand and if I fall. From strength to strength you call me strength, to strength you call me strength, to strength you call me home. From strength to strength you call me strength, to strength you call me strength, to strength you call me home. Step by step, you call me step by step, you call me home. Step by step, step by step, you call me home. You call me home. And in my heart I hear this song of the highway, saying someday soon I'll stand above the clouds. I'll pass through this veil of tears, your strength will hold me through the years. Barren lands I'll drink your springs of life that flows through everything. Strength behind me, strength before me, strength beneath me if I stand and if I fall. Strength behind me, strength before me, your strength beneath me if I stand or if I fall. Strength to strength you call me strength, to strength you call me strength, to strength you call me home. From strength to strength you call me strength, to strength you call me strength, to strength you call me home. Step by step, step by step, you call me home. Step, step, step by step, you call me home. You call me home. In my heart I hear the song of the highway, saying someday soon I'll stand above the clouds.